I always rely on Dahlia's dancing to let me know. I can watch from behind the scenes in the little producer part, so I can tell when she starts really getting into it. That's when the screen comes down and we jump into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. What day is today? Thursday. Happy Thursday. Uh, Welcome to another episode of Cut the Shit, Cue the Genius, where I get to join Michelle Bruno and Ruckus Maker every week. Dahlia Algazar for the best conversations. Honestly, we have a lot of conversations in a week, but this one is always fun. We're always joined by the geniuses in the audience, which are all the people who watch on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, all these wonderful places, and usually share their insights, which are better than ours. So it's always a fun time. Today, I'm super excited because we're talking about a topic that I like to geek out on a little bit with the epic tech guru, Jim Spellos. Jim, so glad that you could join us today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. It's going to be so much fun to share this stuff with all of you and the entire audience.
Last week we talked about AI, and I know the conversation was like very interesting and it was getting people to really think. And so to get into a topic like this, and I know we will touch a little bit on AI even within this conversation, is fun. Just to set the stage, Ruckus Maker says she does not like Google Drive. Google Sheets in particular.
I say Google Drive.
Okay. Google Sheets. Google Sheets. She does not like Google Sheets. I use Google Sheets for pretty much everything. Michelle and Jim, where do you guys stand in terms of overall use of these kinds of Google Sheets in particular?
Well, I'm just going to say that it's interesting to me because philosophically, we're always telling people, get away from Google Sheets and Excel, try this new automated software that, does so much more. And we find that, planners just are in love with Excel and spreadsheets and Google Sheets and all of that. So I'm going to find this kind of a humorous conversation from a philosophical standpoint. Yes, I use it. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I do use it.
They love it because they know it. And that's part of human nature is we find what we know and we stay with it. Now, with that said, I've been teaching Excel for 20 years, and to me, going to Google Sheets was kicking and screaming. It's like, why? Why learn the same thing again with different nuances? But what I found out, especially in the past few years, is that there are some, if not significant, some pretty clear differences that's out there between the two. And it's sort of a battle. Every time you have one of them do something new, the other one does it. So for example, 3-4 years ago, Excel came up with dynamic arrays, which we'll talk about in the context of Google, because Google didn't have it and Sheets didn't have it. And all of a sudden they have it plus some. So whichever one you're comfortable with, stay with it. And quite frankly, most of the stuff, but not all that we're going to talk about today, is cross-applicable. Yet I understand it. I get it. The planners are out there. The suppliers are out there. We know how to do this. So let's just kick the tires some and make it dance and make it sing and make it do the things we want without having to learn Fort and have Ruckus Maker dance there, and without all the stuff that we need to do to have to relearn and relearn and relearn.
Yeah, I'm so excited to dive into this.
I remember your Excel workshops at industry events where people were like ugly crying outside the door because they flipping couldn't get in. I mean, I was like, what? That was awesome.
What really amazed me doing that for like 15, 16 straight years at some of the industry events is that people would take it again and again and again. And what you realize is you can only capture and process a limited amount of information. So if somebody comes to it 3, 4, 5 years in a row, they kept saying they got something new out of it. And that's because that's where they were in the learning process. So right. A lot of people say you move too fast, you give too much information. No, the idea for me, I think for most of what we teach, is to put a lot out there because you're never going to know what's going to stick with people. And if we do our job well, everyone who's watching today will get at least one thing out of what we're talking about. That's going to change how they do the work.
If you can convert me in 25 minutes, there's a lot of Dahlia's out there.
Dahlia, it might take me longer than you for 25 minutes, but we'll give it a shot, okay?
I just wanted to give you the challenge. That's it.
I got it. We'll take it.
Take
All right,
it.
so let's dive in. What are some things that you can show us that people who are watching might not know about
Well,
Google?
Here's how I'm thinking about it. I'm going to, in a second, dive into the sheets. I'm going to start basic. I'm going to start with a couple of shortcuts that people should know. A couple of them are Excel-based, some of them aren't. And then we're going to get into a couple of the tools, and then we're going to start talking about outside the sheet. And what I mean by that is using more than just the Google Sheet that you have. And one case, and I'm always going to be looking at the clock because I want to make sure we don't short shift this, is talk about how Google Sheet can make a conference app for you at no cost. And I actually just did that for an MPI conference a few weeks ago. I'm going to show you the app. I'm going to show you that everything was designed inside of Google Sheets and one secondary low-code tool. So why don't we just go into Google? And that's a mess there, but let's go to the playground here. Let's talk about a few things right off the top. Number one, you get this, and Dahlia gets this, and she doesn't know where to go. So you got to understand one or two shortcuts. The first one is if you hit the control key and the slash, you're going to bring up a list of all the keyboard shortcuts, which, by the way, when you're in Gmail and you're in Google, typically, that's the domain of the question mark, which also works in Facebook and Gmail and Twitter and all other places. But if you need to know a keyboard shortcut, you can just hit control slash and get there. Now, if you want to search, you want to do something, you want to make a pivot table, and you don't even know where to look, then what you need to do is hit alt slash, and that allows you to search all the menus. So I can just right here go pivot, and boom, in about a couple of characters, I see insert pivot table, and it'll take me right to the process. So just understand those two shortcuts really, really are incredibly useful. Now, what I want to do at this point is I want to go into, well, let's go here. Okay, let's go into a nice, big, fat old document here. And we have a couple of really long formulas that are here. Now we have it even longer here. I mean, we're talking about completely, how do you do that? But the bottom line is sometimes you need more space to be able to see the formula. And one more shortcut that we want to talk about is just moving your cursor just below the function bar. Again, this here is the function bar, also called the formula bar sometimes. But if you move it just below there, you're going to see the cursor change to an up-down arrow, and that will give you the ability to be able to access, to give yourself more information, more space in there. And that's a really good tip for people who aren't that comfortable with Excel, where it works there too, as well as within Google Sheets, to make sure that they have easy access and can see their formulas. Now let's get to something just absolutely practical application. So you have this registration list for your event. You've set it up properly, no blank rows, no blank columns, your header's in your first row, you got a lot of stuff, but you want to use this as your check-in tool at the event. And goodness knows you're not going to have a huge computer with you, but you'll have your phone, or you might have a tablet. So let's create a checkbox that you can use and just tap right on site when somebody arrives at an event. So first thing we're going to do is just click on any of the columns. And then I'm going to right click because I always like the context sensitive menus that come in. And I'm just going to insert a blank column here. And we're going to call this checkbox just because I'm not that creative this morning. Now, what we want to do is we want to put a checkbox into every one of these cells, except for row 1. So I'm going to click in E, right on the letter E, and then I'm going to do a quick control click on that checkbox word, because I don't want to put a checkbox there. I want to put it everywhere else. Now that I have that all highlighted, I go to insert, I go to checkbox, and there you go. And so now on site, this will come up and you don't need a cursor, you don't need to type anything in, you can just tap it. And what occurs here is it puts into the system a true false. So you can now use this to extract information. So, tell me everyone who attended the conference who actually arrived there. And maybe you can then subsort that by the type of room they had or the hotel they were at. So creating a checkbox, really, really, really easy. Now, one other thing in terms of managing your screen approach is to be able to, as you start to scroll down, freeze the top pane so that it doesn't go and lose row 1 constantly. And there is a setting for that, but there's a shortcut for that too. And if we go to the box that's on the far left side, you see that box that typically is the select all box, and people click that to select everything that's on a sheet. But what I'm going to tell you to do is I'm going to tell you to move it over so that you see that thick gray horizontal line, and click and just drag it down to 1. And by doing that, you've now frozen that pane.
Oh, wow.
And you can do the same thing on the column side to go to maybe to always have first and last on the screen. So when we start pulling over to the right, we're never going to lose that information. So it's as simple as being able to just click on that and take that information. And then I can always get rid of them. I can use my Control Z to get rid of them. There's a lot of different ways to be able to do that. So the quick freeze approach, really, really cool. Let's talk about something. Let's talk about something that Microsoft doesn't have. And that is in these date columns, the arrive and depart, because I have set them up as dates. And so just so we're clear how to do that, because Excel makes it a little bit tricky, is once I highlight a column, I'm going to go up to the format. And even though it doesn't say date on that primary screen, you go to number, and then you start seeing the date. But if you keep going down this menu, you have a custom date and time, which you can click on. And then with that, you can then choose exactly what you want. You can take away anything. I want this set up so that it's 8/5/30, month, year, or month, day, year. And now I have it set up. So why did I go through all that? Because once you set this up as a date, if I need to enter something else in there, and let me move to the bottom of the screen right here. And I want to go to this particular new line. And let's put a ruckus maker in here as the attendee, and she's coming from the east. What day she's arriving, I could type it in, but a nice double click here will allow me to bring up the calendar.
Oh, snap.
And now I can insert it in there. Now, sometimes that calendar doesn't work if you just assign this as a date. So I'm going to show you one other trick here for columns F and G. And that is utilization of data validation. Data validation is such a cool tool, and it does play across Excel and Sheets. But what we want to do is somehow validate what's going into this particular column. So we highlight, as always, what we want to start with. We go to data, and we go down toward the bottom of the menu where we have validation. We'll click on that, and now we're going to add a rule. Now you see we validated and we put a checkbox in column E, but at this point what we're going to do is we can build a drop down here that's really, really cool, but I'm going to make it very simple. I'm going to say is a valid date. So you can't put in the day of the week, you can't put in somebody's name there. A very simple validation. And then we can reject the input if they put the wrong information in there. We're going to say done. It's going to be valid for everything from F1 all the way to the bottom. Cool. So let's see if it works. Let me try to put into 129 Wednesday. And not going to work. So we validated to that level. But also because we put the validation in, now the double click there brings up the calendar, which we can now put in that way. So I love that trick. And that is one that's not in Excel at all, but utilizing the calendar feature that is there. So with that said, let's move out of this. Actually, no, I have one more thing to show here, because I have a column D that's called unique. Now, a bit of a backstory here. About 3-4 years ago, Excel created some new tools called dynamic arrays. And it's geek speak, but what it means is that you can build a formula that actually not only fills in information in the cell you're entering the formula, but in a series of cells below that. And why that's important is now we can use tools such as filter and sort in a way that's much more dynamic. But let's look at unique, because I'm just getting this report for the first time and I see the regions that are there and I have no idea which region, how many regions there are. So can I figure out a way to get that listing right there? So I can, and that's with a very new function that is called unique. Works in Excel, works in Sheets. What we're going to do with unique is identify the range. Now, I don't want the whole range. I don't necessarily want what's in C1. So I'm going to want what's in D2 to begin with. But I want that range to not go only to the end of this particular list. I want it to go to as long as we actually have information. And by the way, if I put D in there, it was the absolute wrong thing to put in there. Let's go with C. So C2 colon C with no number allows me now to say no matter what I put into C, it's going to automatically populate what I want. And that's all this formula is. I don't need to say anything else. Unique, give it the C2, the beginning of the list, all the way to C. And now when I hit enter, I have all of them right here. Now, to make sure that we know that this works, if we go all the way down to the ruckus maker here and say that she's coming from, I don't know, Greenland, and then we go back to the top, we now see it automatically fills that in there. These are dynamic arrays that clearly have a value, but someone's going to say, I really want that to be alphabetized. So great. Now what we can do is we can build functionality to wrap around the unique function. And in fact, what we want to do there is sort. So what I'm going to say is before unique, I'm going to type in sort, put a parentheses, bundle, nest that unique function around there. And now by doing that, it's going to give me everything in alpha order. So if I need to extract a huge list and be able to do so to get only the active components in there, we can use that unique function for that. Really, really cool stuff. Let's move on. I know that I have more than a half hour of stuff I'd love to show you, but what I want to go right now is a really cool trick within budgeting and in particular within charting. And Excel has a great shortcut, F11 for charts. Sheets doesn't have that, but if we want to make a quick chart, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide column B just so I can decide whether I want to chart out what's in A6 to C10. Fine. So I can go to insert, I can choose chart. It's going to give me a chart. Great. Now on the right side, I have the editor and I can choose the type of chart. So maybe what I want to do here is instead of a column chart, I want a pie chart. Cool. Great. But now I want to do something a little bit more. I want to take that decorations and I want to pop it out. So all I have to do is double click on that. And now as you'll see on the right side, it gives me a new function to enter, distance from center. Let me pull it out, 25%. So now with just 1 or 2 clicks, I can take a chart and pull stuff out and get a much better visual without having to know rows and columns and trying to figure all that out.
That's
really
cool.
simple. Yeah, that's really cool, right? It's a chart editor that gives me the functionality that I need to
All right,
make.
I'm a little excited now, just a
Yeah,
little.
I'm
You're like
I
not
can't-
even close
We're
to
at- we're at-
25
I
minutes.
can't put all the cool
kind
stuff
of
on
there,
the beginning, right?
kind of there, like right here.
Okay, great. Now let's do this. I have a couple of things. You know what I want to do here? I want to go to another particular sheet. And I want to tell you that you can create your own functions. And I've created one that I've called, sorry, Michelle, about this, but I called it Liz and Dahlia. And I want to show you what it does. And then I'm going to show you a real application in our industry for this. So if I want to go and create a named function, I go to the data menu. And by the way, oftentimes the cool stuff all lives in the data menu. So if you're not sure where to go and you forget that, /control/shortcut, go to the data function. That's where it is. I'm going to go to named functions and you're going to see I have one that's called Liz and Dahlia. And so let's take a look at it. I'm going to edit it. And all I've done is I've multiplied whatever's in the cell by a particular number, 3.55456. Why? I don't know. But all I'm doing here is telling it that I wanted to ask me for a cell reference, such as maybe E9, and I gave it a definition. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that now inside writing this particular function, I'm going to start typing LIZ and look what comes up. Liz and Dahlia come up as a active function. So now I just need to put the cell reference in, E9, close parentheses, hit enter, and it does all the work and it autofills. So able to do that with just anything we create. But nobody's going to use a Liz and Dahlia function. Well, maybe I will.
Well, they should.
Well, absolutely they should. And that's why they're here if they're
I'm
not.
just saying that
But-
that should be.
Okay, go copyright that right now.
Okay.
Liz and Dahlia.
Trademark
But
it, add it in there.
what they might actually do is have a function that multiplies the tax and gratuity by the location that they're working on. So if I'm always doing events in New York City, maybe what I want, instead of trying to build something that has multiplied by this and make sure you carry over the one, I create a function that does that. So I've described what it does. So if I ever get confused, it'll tell me. I've told it wants to sell. And I'm saying what we want to do is take whatever we're equaling. We want to grab the cell reference, and then we want to multiply it by the tax. And we always put the 1 before the tax. So it doesn't just give me the tax, it gives me additive. And then also by 20% gratuity, which we can always change. So now I can go into here and look up TaxGrat and go, great. Now I can say E9. Helps if I actually type it in there properly, right? E9, there it is, boom. And now there you go. And you want that to go down for the rest. And now you have all that built in. So all you have is the base formula you need. And now you're able to do all of that calculation just by building your own function. With all that said, all this pales into comparison to, as I'm looking at the clock, the last two things I'm going to be able to show you. And one, I talk about both of them being outside the sheets, because really it's using something more than just what we have with Google Sheets. And so what I want to do here, and I know it's going to be a little messy at this point, but I'm going to bring you to a Google Sheet that was devised for the MPI Cascadia conference a few weeks ago. I was speaking at it. And when we were planning the event, I said, you know, what I want to be able to do is show everyone that they can build a conference app for free using Google Sheets. And you always get, no, you can't do that. That's impossible. So we put together, with the folks who were running the conference, a really function, well-designed sheet. Had the speakers, it has the schedule, it has other information, has a list of the sponsors. Here's the thing. This is part and parcel of a whole new series of tools out there that are called low code. And they're really not that new because they've been around for a while. And if you use Wix or Squarespace, you're smack in the middle of the low code revolution. But take a look at this, is that by using a tool called Glide, not the only one by any means, there are a bunch of them. There's the one that I started using first. You can take this information that's here with all the speakers and turn it into a functional app with pictures, with all the information. So we had the home sheet. This is all just pulling from the Google Sheet, the entire schedule, and it gave the information that's there. All that is done, and it didn't cost a dime.
So
now
this app, then you download this from the App Store, or is this?
No, actually, it is a non-native. So
okay.
It's going to have a URL. If you don't pay, if you use the free version, it's going to have the extension .glideapp.io. But if you want to pay for a month or two, you can get a customized URL. You can even put it onto your screen. It has the complete ability to resize, based on any sort of type of screen that the user is using. All of that right there.
Nice.
So, auction information that's there. We put live links and everything. We had attendee list. We had a map of the conference, free of charge. Really friggin' amazing stuff when we think about it.
You just gave a heart attack to some of the event app companies out there. So kudos.
Yeah. Here's the thing, Dahlia. I don't believe that this is an either or conversation. I believe this is an and conversation, because there are going to be times that they have functionality that we need, because this is going to have its limitations. But I also know there's an awful lot of planners out there and suppliers out there and other business professionals who could use the ability to create something simple and functional and effective and free of charge that really will transform what they're doing. Even if it's nothing more than just be able to say to the app company, this is what I want it to look like.
Right.
All you have to do is understand that have the power, and Google Sheets gives you that incredible power to do that. So let's end before we get back to where everyone is. I'll go to the speakers here. I'm going to make this a little smaller. Let's talk artificial intelligence, because we can't have this conversation without having a conversation.
I don't think we'll ever have a conversation without an AI conversation.
Well, not for the next couple of years, that's for sure.
Well,
Um,
we've been trying to have it with everybody for the
Yeah.
last decade or so. Like, it's like mobile apps is coming back to, oh, guess what? That's the most, intriguing technology at the moment. But like
Well,
AI, I think is finally people are like, oh, is that what Spelos and Corbin and everybody was talking about 10
yeah.
years ago?
Well, yeah, but you know what? The geeks are ahead, and it's not necessarily a good thing of everyone else because we're looking at the promise. People don't give a darn about the promise. They
No.
want to know about the application. And
Yes.
really, until DAL-E came out and ChatGPT came out, and people saw what it could do, it was theoretical. It was people talking about the singularity and the end of the universe and how it's going to take over, which they're still talking about, by the way. And that's another conversation. But for right now, we're talking about a conversation of functionality. And to do that, we go into Google Sheet and we actually get an add-on that's called Numerous.ai. And what it will do, we'll open up the sidebar right here, which gives you a good approach. Okay, I'm in multiple accounts. I understand that. So I might have to actually do this. Let me do this. Let me get into here where I'm going to be able to do this better. So extensions, numerous, show sidebar, give me an error message again. Fine, I don't care. There we go. Perfect. Good. So now I can do things. I can have it answer a question. I can have it write a message. I can go to, okay, let me do this. Let me go into G10 and say equal write, and it's write a thank you note to, and then I'm going to say, well, I'm going to say the person in D10, and by the way, you got to put commas there, for their sales work. And we know the game right here. We can be more specific, right? A 3-sentence. But all we're doing now is using a new function within Google Sheets. That is the third-party function that will load it, and then we'll put it in there. We can use the AI to actually understand the data that's in there. We can use the AI to explain a formula or tell me I want to build a formula that does something and I don't know how to do it. Well, that's where the AI comes in. And you've probably heard, I'm going to guess that most people have heard, and Liz, why don't we go back to face-to-face? But why, Microsoft didn't do this first? Well, they're working on it right now. The bottom line at this point is that they are working on their Copilot, which just got introduced last week. And that's the battle game. But I don't believe that's the long-term functionality improvement of Sheets or of Excel or any of those tools. I think it's sort of the glitter that's there that
Right.
people are going to glom onto, and it's really, really cool. But the bottom line is we took about 10 functions and 10 approaches right here in a few minutes and hopefully gave people some tools that will allow them to do what they need to do quicker, better, easier. That's what it's about.
It is. That's what it's all about.
That's what Ruckus Maker is all about. So did he convince you?
Did I?
Yes. On
Tell us a little bit.
the 18-minute mark, yes.
Okay, so was it the dates? Was it the chart? Which one?
Well,
Gosh,
I
you
agree
go.
it was the Liz Dahlia function, but I don't know.
I'll build a better one for you. That's okay.
No,
No
I
big deal.
think it's just honestly, and I think this is where event profs should do more of. And busy event profs, right? I'm going to put myself in that bucket.
Mhm.
Is they need to sit down with a master or a Sherpa on different types of technologies, and then just watch,
Mhm.
because it's always changing. And I think what overwhelms me sometimes is like, like everybody else, am I going to learn new functionality? It's hidden somewhere. It's in a drop down. I would rather watch Spelos play and say, ooh, I like that. Or like, oh, Numerous AI. Like Sean is like, oh, can't live without it now, And so I think this is where we just need to do more of that,
We
but yeah,
do, and I
there's
think it
Huh?
comes across all different applications, all different industries.
Totally.
But the more
Absolutely.
you learn from the people who know how to do it, the more you're going to say, those 14 things stunk, but this one right here is the
Yep.
one I can bring back to the office.
Well, I think, and I would love to hear from the audience as well, is, if this is the type of education or if this is the type of tech adoption that or onboarding that is going to work in, going forward, like you said, across all different technologies. We wanted something as simple as Google Sheets because Liz raves about Google Sheets. I tend to shy away from Google Sheets, but there's certain elements where we just need to watch each other how you do something different. You took an event Bible. Everybody has an event Bible on Excel or on Google Sheets, right?
Mhm.
And you just made it cooler. That's all right now.
Well, and to Michelle's point early in the conversation, you were saying, philosophically, we're always telling people like get away from this kind of older technology, and there's a lot of other tools out there. But this is a good reason why I think this is why planners still stick, myself included, to things like Google Sheets, because it's a simple tool, but it works really freaking well. You could do pretty much everything you need without worrying about an integration point, without trying something new, buying another subscription. And, for independent planners like myself who work with multiple clients, the idea of getting like all my clients to buy the same tool so that I'm always using it does a lot, so there is a lot to learn about. I just learned a ton of new stuff, even as much as I love Google Sheets. I didn't know this stuff, but even within very simple platforms, there are so much that you can do. If you stick to one, that's the hard part sometimes about like the attraction. You're like, ooh, there's a new thing over here. Ooh, and then you just forget that like those good tools.
It is squirrel, that's essentially where we are with our attention. Do you guys ever talk about Zapier?
We have a few times, right?
Yeah, because Zapier integrates so seamlessly with Sheets too, and really can take that interconnectivity, especially for the small, mid-sized organization that doesn't have the master system that all integrates and slices and dices properly, and really allows them to be able to connect their podcasts with their automated marketing, with their emails, with their sheets. And I also know from what I've been reading that Google Sheets is looking to build in a Zapier functionality automatically. So my guess is sometime this year, both Office and Sheets are going to have these third-party integrations built into their products.
That's perfect. Well, thank you for this. Bruno, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm speechless. I'm just I have written down all kinds of notes, not because I know I can go back to the video and get the tips, but just it makes me think about so many different things where there are gaps in knowledge in the industry, and just I don't know. I'm verklempt.
And that's a wrap.
Yeah, that is all we need. Thank you so much, Jim, for joining us and sharing all these things, because we always learn something new from you. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
And thank you, ladies, for joining yet again. We have another great episode lined up for next Thursday. I don't have a beautiful screen for it this time, but we're being joined by Cindy Lowe, who is going to talk about South by Southwest and all kinds of wonderful things. So very excited for that episode. And until then, keep doing what you do. Learn some more Google Sheets stuff. Very excited. Thank you so much, Jim.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.